Well, hello, everyone. I think we will get started being we're at the top of the hour. On behalf of Season Health, I would like to welcome you all to this evening's webinar, Mind Over Platter, an intro to mindful eating. Please know that the webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone who registered for the event. Before we jump in, a few items to review. We will be sharing some different activities to create a personal and interactive experience. We may ask you to respond with your thoughts and ideas. If you're comfortable, we encourage you to share using the chat. We also encourage you to post any questions in the chat during our presentation. Emily and I will answer as many questions as possible as time allows at the end. As you probably are aware, audio and video have been disabled for all participants. If you have any issues, once again, please use the chat. For those of you who may not be familiar with Season Health, Season offers personalized nutrition programs that help you learn to eat healthier without giving up the delicious foods you love. We provide virtual visits with registered dietitians, tips and guidance on nutrition, navigating health conditions, and cooking, and thousands of chef-created recipes and affordable pre-made meals available in our app that makes staying on track achievable. I would love to introduce your hosts for this evening, Emily Nischberg and myself, Abby Thibodeau. Emily and I are both seasoned health registered dietitians and certified diabetes care and education specialists. Both of us have combined experience and interest in empowering people to develop a healthy relationship with food and bringing back the joy and pleasure in eating. Emily and I are part of an amazing team of seasoned registered dietitians that provide medical nutrition therapy and personalized coaching to support people in achieving their health goals. Before we jump into our topic tonight, I'd love to kind of talk about what we're going to be covering for this evening. Tonight, we're just giving you a taste of mindful eating. We will answer the question, what is mindful eating? We will also talk about factors that influence our eating habits, how to recognize hunger, and ways to create mindful eating habits. We also have included a few mindful eating activities and reflections as you start your mindful eating journey with us. And lastly, again, we just want to encourage you to enter your questions into the chat as you think of them. Throughout our presentation, we will answer as many questions as we can at the end. So now I'm going to pass it over to Emily to get us started.
All right. Thank you, Abby. So happy to be with all of you this evening talking about mindful eating. We're going to start off with a simple activity just to perhaps help us with our mindset tonight. So if you have a pen or a pencil nearby, I want you to grab it. If you don't, you're just going to imagine that you have it. So you're going to take the hand that you normally write with and just grab your pen or pencil. And again, if you don't have it, you're just going to grab it and hold on to it as if you're getting ready to sign a document. And now you're going to take that pen or pencil and move it into the other hand. And I imagine that by simply moving it into the other hand, you have a new feeling. Your body's tuning into a new feeling as you hold this pen or pencil or imaginary pen or pencil in your hand. And now using that hand, that non-dominant hand, whether it's on paper or you're actually using a pen or pencil, just go through the motions of signing your name with the hand that you generally do not use. Now just pausing and thinking about what was that like, moving from this hand that's very comfortable, that you use all the time, into the other hand. And if you feel comfortable with it, putting it in the chat what that felt like. When Abby and I were trying this earlier today, oh, that word awkward came up when we were talking about this today. Awkward. Oh, yeah, not fun. Uncomfortable. Yeah. So it felt a little foreign, uncomfortable, uneasy. You really had to think about what you were doing. That's a important thing to remember as I make the connection here. I had to concentrate. So when we go through this concept of mindful eating tonight or mindfulness, it can be a new topic, right? It can be a new experience. And just as you were shifting into the other hand, that's a new experience and it takes a lot of thought and it feels uncomfortable and awkward. There's going to be moments tonight or moments that after this evening where you're practicing mindful eating and you feel the same way. And what we want to say is that's normal and that's to be expected when we're trying something new. Thanks for being adventurous and trying that with us. So let's keep exploring. So I've got this beginning of a sentence here, and it says food is, and I'd like you to fill in the blank, and you can use as many entries on the chat as you would like. Food is. What comes up for you? Food is fuel, yes. These might be neutral or positive or even negative feelings. Public health, yummy. Food is family. Oh, food is love. Yes. So as we see some of these words coming in, oh yeah, we've got some positive, we've got some negatives. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel fattening, or it can feel like drudgery. So there's positive, negative, neutral experiences with food. But what I'm seeing, well, let me keep looking at these: stress reliever, comforting. So as we see these words coming in, ways to connect with people, we can see that food is so much more than what we sometimes talk about food as. Sometimes when as dietitians or when we're talking about healthy food, we might be thinking about things like calories or fat or carbohydrates or protein. And the reality is when we've filled in the blank here, food is, those things didn't come up. Food can be complex. It can be so much more than just calories, carbohydrates, fat, protein. So when we're thinking about navigating food, we're thinking about achieving health goals through navigating food, we do have to expand our skill set beyond what we might be comfortable with. We do expand our skill set beyond calories, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And mindful eating or mindfulness can be one of those ways that we begin to navigate the complexity of food. So let's keep digging here. Here's another question. Have you ever eaten food out of habit or impulse or reaction? I'm just thinking about that question for a minute, and maybe something comes up right away that you're thinking about. You can share it in the chat if you want, or you can simply say yes or no, or you don't have to respond if it doesn't feel comfortable. But have you ever eaten food out of habit or impulse or reaction? Maybe you finished your plate just because it was there, or you felt that you had to clean your plate, or maybe you skipped a food out of habit of following certain food rules that you've set for yourself or someone else has set for you, or you've eaten straight out of the bag in front of the television, and then before you know it, you've eaten more than you realized. Yeah, I see a comment here. Yeah, when you're watching a movie at home, maybe you found yourself in the kitchen when stress is high, or you've overeaten when you felt upset about something, or even if you've eaten, shared a moment with food in celebration or in rewarding yourself. Yeah, I'm seeing some comments here really connecting to not realizing how much we've eaten when we're noticing that we're eating maybe in a connection with feelings. Good. These are all really, really important things that you all are bringing up. So let's, we're all relating to this. We're relating to, yes, we've eaten food out of habit or impulse or reaction. Now let's just take a moment. We're going to do something just to experience what mindfulness might do as we are experiencing this habit, impulse, or reaction. So I just want you to find a comfortable place in your chair. And remember, this is just an invitation. It's not something that you have to do, but sitting comfortably in your chair, allow your shoulders and your chest and your stomach all to relax. Sitting in a balanced position. And if you choose, you can close your eyes and begin to focus just on the feeling of your breath. And begin by taking 2 or 3 deeper breaths from your diaphragm, letting the air flow all the way into your stomach without any push or strain, and then flowing gently back out again. Letting yourself experience these 2 or 3 deeper breaths again. Noticing an increased sense of calm and relaxation. Breathing in the clean, fresh air, and breathing out any sense of tension or stress. And perhaps as you're focusing on your breath, you'll notice that the air is cooler as it comes in at the tip of the nose and warmer as it flows out. Okay, when you're ready, just gently open your eyes and come back to the space of this room. So you just had this moment, perhaps of mindfulness, right? Where you were able to focus on your breath. And lots of times when people are asking, how does mindfulness fit into this? If we think about a habit, an impulse, or reaction, lots of times those happen quickly. Mindfulness can become a tool to create space. So this activity we just did, we created space. And lots of times when we create space, now we move into this opportunity of choice. So instead of habit, impulse, or reaction with food, we've created space. And in that space, we can now make a choice about food. So I'm going to turn this over to Abby. She's going to dive in a little bit deeper around this concept of mindfulness and how it fits into mindful eating.
Great. Thanks, Emily. So Emily just brought us through a great exercise to begin to create a mindful space. But what is mindfulness? When we really think about it, it seems like a very simple concept. When you look at definitions, a lot of it brings the term awareness, presence. Mindfulness means being fully engaged in whatever we are doing or whatever is going on in the present moment. This also means awareness around our thoughts, feelings, our bodily sensations, and our surrounding environment without judging or getting caught up in them. The other word when talking about mindfulness to be aware of is acceptance, meaning that we're paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judging or labeling them as good or bad. When we practice that mindfulness, our thoughts are tuned into what we're sensing in the moment rather than dwelling on something from the past or anticipating what's going to happen in the future. As humans, we all have the ability to be mindful. It can seem like super difficult to do because many of us have learned to disconnect from the right now, but you can learn how to access it with practice. So being in the moment, like I said, takes practice, but it can help us see more clearly how to respond more effectively to what life throws at us and to bring out an inner wisdom that may have been previously silenced or even ignored. So now that we've talked about mindfulness, how does that apply to eating? It's essentially the same thing. We're just applying it to our food choices. We often forget to listen to our bodies and we lose trust in our bodies. As Emily talked about earlier, we can eat at times because of habit, impulse, or reaction. Some of you mentioned in the chat that I'm looking at now for stress, to sort of stuff down emotions, right? There's so many different reasons why we eat, but mindfulness can bring us back to figuring that out in the moment. Mindful eating allows you to trust your body and mind and helping you make those food decisions. This can be referred to as inner wisdom or internal cues or signs to guide those food decisions. It also opens up the door to all of our senses: taste, smell, what something looks like, how it feels in our mouth, and as the food begins to fill us up, how it makes us feel after we're done. Some of these things we're not aware of because we're so distracted and we're not, again, truly present. When we are truly present, we experience food in a whole new way. You may realize things about foods that you were not aware of or weren't even expecting. Some people have come back to me and said, Abby, I thought I really liked this food, but I found it wasn't one of my favorite foods. So you can really learn and taste and sense using all of those things to really guide those choices and create this wonderful relationship with food. Mindful eating can also help guide how much we eat. learning to feel your hunger and fullness levels. So when you think about mindful eating, now that we're kind of talking about it, how is this the same or different than how you make choices about food now? How is mindful eating different than maybe some food rules you may have? Feel free to put some things in the chat. I'd love to kind of hear what your guys' thoughts are. I know for myself, I used to have a lot of food rules. We call these external food rules. So, rules that were told by me that were supposed to keep me feeling healthier or to meet a certain goal. I'm seeing some stuff come in here now. Flexible and freeing. Yeah. So, Emily's got some great feedback about how she makes choices around food. She's flexible, right? Um, I began losing weight when I stopped connecting watching TV with eating. Yeah. So when we become more aware of those things, it creates that space to give us the choice back, right? We're not doing things uh, without thought. We're in the present moment. So that's great to hear. So let's dig a little bit deeper into hunger and fullness. How do I know when to eat? Can be really tough, and a lot of things can suppress our hunger and fullness feelings, our own physical feelings. But this scale can be a helpful tool to evaluate your hunger and fullness levels as you become more attuned to them before you decide to eat, during a meal or snack, and then even after you've finished eating. This tool again can help you determine what your hunger cues are and how different types of foods, amounts of foods affect you. This is just a tool to allow you to develop awareness of your body's signals. It is not good or bad, it is just to bring awareness. So let's take a closer look at this hunger fullness scale. So as you'll see, it goes from 1 to 10. 1 represents so hungry you don't feel well. You would eat anything if it was in front of you. This can also be a high risk time for overeating. If we go all the way down to the other end of the scale, we've got 10. 10 represents so full you could be sick and maybe even in pain or both. Some people refer to this as Thanksgiving meal full, can't move, miserable. If we look right in the middle of the scale, 5 feels neutral. You cannot feel your stomach at all. It's neither empty or full. Some terms that come to mind for me: comfortable, content. It's probably around evening meal time for many of you. Some of you may have eaten already, and some of you may be thinking about what you're preparing to eat soon. When you're looking at the scale, where are you at right now? What do you notice physically about your body? Any thoughts or emotions come to mind? Again, feel free to share it in the chat. I know that I have not eaten an evening meal yet. So I am about a 4 right now because I just had a snack before we started. So I feel okay, but I know I've got some room for a meal shortly here after we finish up tonight. Anybody else? It can be difficult to feel these physical cues and tune into our hunger and fullness. I think I'm seeing 4. Okay, we've got a 4. So someone's pretty darn close to where I'm at as well. 7. Okay, so someone is a little bit uncomfortably full. Um, yeah, so this can really be helpful when learning about that hunger and fullness, especially if you haven't been listening to it for some time. Um, those cues or voices that we have naturally since the day we were born may be silenced or ignored due to your own personal experiences and relationship with food, or even, again, those current food rules that you might have. Um, okay, we've got people kind of all over the board. People just eaten. Great, thanks for the feedback. So let's see here. So I think the last thing I want to say about the hunger and fullness scale. So as you do hunger check-ins, you may be ready to eat and you're feeling those physical signs of hunger. Then there might be times when you discover that you're reaching for food but not physically hungry at all. Have you ever thought about what you are actually hungry for? Again, we sort of covered this earlier, but those emotions, in response of eating in response to emotions, eating in response to stress. That question, as you are reaching for that food and are not physically hungry, is a question that you can ask yourself. What am I actually hungry for? For example, stress. Is it going for a walk? Is it chatting with a friend? This can, again, create that awareness of what you actually need. All right. I'm just checking the chat here. Sometimes I crave the taste of food, even if I'm not hungry. Boredom. Yes, those are very common things that can happen, again, when we are not fully attuned to what's going on. So as we continue to think about hunger and fullness before our next webinar, this worksheet that you see here will be shared with all of you and can be used to begin your journey of increased awareness of those body signals that we just talked about. Please feel free to use the worksheet to journal the food that you ate, again, the hunger and fullness levels you're experiencing, and your satisfaction from the food. It's pretty simple. You'll basically rate your hunger before you eat based on that hunger and fullness scale. When you're finished eating, you can rate your fullness and satisfaction level. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just a way for you to listen to your body and become more aware of your body's hunger and fullness cues. We'll be reflecting on this at our upcoming webinar with, again, more details to follow. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, and we're going to hopefully answer some questions that you all have posted in the chat. So, and feel free to continue to post. We have a few minutes here towards the end to answer any questions you guys might have.
So it looks like we don't have any questions right now, but this is a great place to pause, right? So we've tried some new things. We've introduced mindful eating. We've actually practiced a few really critical skills in mindful eating. One is creating that pause, using kind of a mindfulness practice or a visualization practice. The other is using the hunger and fullness discovery tool. Will the charts be available afterwards? Yes. So you are going to get an email, I believe. Just maybe you can confirm that, but you'll be getting an email with the recording. And when the recording is sent out, we're going to send out these resources. The scale will be included, and also the hunger fullness discovery worksheet. Yes, Jess is confirming. It's all going out via email. So, I mean, that's a great question, because it looks like, you're connecting to that idea of really exploring hunger. And I would say a lot of the times when we're teaching, and Abby, you jump in, but like that hunger check-in, that hunger discovery tool can be a really important tool. And many times people come back just by trying that. And a somewhat easy tool to start test driving, right? Because there's no right or wrong answer here. But it just gives a lot of insight. Lots of good practice of tuning in. Oh, yeah. We're seeing a little bit of feedback here in the chat around ordering at season. So your experience at season. And what we'll do is we'll sideline that comment right there, but we want to make sure that we respond to that so that you have a really smooth interaction with season and using the prepared meals. Okay, so I'm going to give it just a minute for another question or any other questions that might roll in. And I would say that, if we're thinking about mindfulness, sometimes the question is like, is this the only way to navigate food, right? And this is just a tool, right? This is a tool that you get to use with all the other tools that you've used before. So integrating it with what you already know. And sometimes in mindfulness, we use this idea of inner wisdom, right? You know a lot of things already. You know what you tolerate well, what doesn't settle well, what maybe you like. So it's just another way to fine tune it and explore. Okay, since we're not seeing any Q&A, what I would say is maybe Abby and we can talk a little bit. Oh, there is a quick question. We can talk a little, formulate maybe some answers to some common questions we have around mindful eating and send those out as a resource.
That's a great idea. And I think, someone had posted earlier about, where was it? Craving the taste of food,
Mm.
even though not being hungry. And so navigating that can be challenging because, trying to determine what that reason is. Sometimes it can be related to not getting enough of a specific food that your body is needing. So those signals are telling us something. So it depends on the type of food you're craving, what your intake looked like earlier. And so again, that exploration, this hunger fullness discovery worksheet can bring to light some of that. But also at our next webinar, we'll be diving in deeper to giving you the tools to really determine the reason why we eat when we're not hungry or when we eat when we're not physically getting those signs. So definitely a great realization that already is showing some huge awareness and mindfulness around habits. So thank you. And I think that's a great idea, Emily. We will definitely put together a Q&A of some very common questions we get a lot.
And there's certainly, I mean, there's some very concrete tools we can use around cravings. But the foundation of all of this, right, is that mindfulness, awareness in the moment, awareness without judgment. And really, as Abby said, using that worksheet just to explore where you are with hunger and fullness, and starting to make those connections and realizations. All right, let's see if I can advance this here. So just a quick summary of what we've gone through as you move into this evening or tomorrow and you start carrying some of this with you. I'm going to encourage you to remember that first moment, that activity that we did tonight, and just the simple idea of moving a pen from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand and what that felt like, and being kind with yourself as you try some of these skills or you start thinking about mindfulness or mindful eating, the concept of mindful eating, that it's okay for it to feel new and uncomfortable, but stick with it. I'm also going to remind you that moving into mindfulness really is without judgment. And sometimes whenever we're talking about food or we're learning new skills around food or even just thinking or experience food, that without judgment piece can be a challenge, right? And so using the pause that we tried at the beginning, that taste of mindfulness, but also the hunger check-in, that can be a way to practice without judgment. Sometimes I'll encourage patients or clients during the conversation of mindful eating is just, in this process, we're choosing curiosity over criticism. And then just a couple of other reminders as we review our time together. You have 2 skills that you test drove this evening. One is just creating that pause, that space, moving from habit, reaction, and impulse into choice, and then doing the fullness and hunger discovery check-in. There's definitely a lot of conversation to still have around mindful eating. This was just the beginning, or as we said, just a taste of mindfulness. We are planning on a second session centered on mindful eating. You can mark your calendars for August 8th. It'll be at the same time, which is 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then as another reminder, you will be getting these resources that we explored this evening. You'll be getting a recording of the webinar, a copy of the hunger fullness scale, as well as the worksheet to start exploring on your own. And we'll add a couple of bonus resources to that email as well. I do see one question that came in that we did not address. Do you ever find that GI doctors listen to someone who comes in with the mindfulness chart where they find common food reactions issues? So I don't know that I have enough experience with this question. I think one of the things that we do when we're working with patients, and Abby, feel free to jump in, is that we are constantly encouraging patients or clients or all of you to be empowered when you're having interactions with your providers. You truly are an expert on your experience. You're tuned into your body, and that you should share those experiences with your provider, whether it's your primary care provider or a specialist. Abby, do you have anything to add to that?
I would agree. I think if I understand correctly that when you go to see your provider that, you have come to some awareness about your food reactions or issues that you might not be heard. And so, you know, I think, as Emily said, we always encourage anyone we're working with to advocate for yourself and to be heard. And if you are not heard, you know, what is that next step? And so again, that is, you are doing exactly what we would recommend in sharing your experience with food or specific foods, and sharing that with your provider. And hopefully they hear you and you get the care that you deserve from your providers.
Yeah, and I would also encourage, if you're feeling this frustration or worried about having this conversation, right? You just want to go into the conversation with confidence, and you happen to be working with a seasoned dietitian right now, bring this up at your appointment, and so that you and your dietitian can work through it, so that you feel confident, prepared to bring up some of your concerns and experiences with your provider or your specialist. So we have reached the hour, or reached the half hour mark. So 30 minutes flies by quickly. Remember, this is not the end of our journey together. This is just the beginning. You can mark your calendar for August 8th, and we'll be sending out invitations and reminders to that session. So grateful to share this evening with all of you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and participating. We really appreciate it.
Take care.